Hello everyone and welcome back to Royville. We are just going to kind of sit and chat, kind of talk about what we would like to do with the channel, some ideas we have. As always, if you have any comments on any of those ideas, go ahead and put them in the comment section. If you think other people might enjoy those ideas, go ahead and share. But we're just going to sit here, kind of chat for a little bit, and see where it goes.
All right. The first one is a very old idea. Those of you who follow me on Facebook and have for a few years already know and are familiar with this project I've been trying to do, which is I want to work my way through, from the bottom up, the top 100 films ever made, according to the American Film Institute. And at the same time, to contrast, I was working my way again from 100 to 1, the worst 100 movies ever made according to IMDb viewers. The problem, as I have found recently, is that the last time I tackled this project, everybody wasn't an internet reviewer. They didn't go on IMDb and rate movies. Now everybody does it. So now the IMDb list of the bottom 100 movies, well, the majority of them are made after the year 2000. And I find it really hard to believe that every bad movie, the worst movies, were made after the year 2000. I mean, there are a few on there. Manos, The Hands of Fate is still on there. Jaws 3D is still on there. There are a few others from the early 80s and late 70s, but there are none from the 50s. There are none, well, a significant minority from the 60s and 70s, and only a few from the 80s and 90s. So what we're going to do and how we're going to approach this is we're just going to put the good 100 movies in one tin. And then in another one, we're going to put the just 100 bad movies. I think that I'm going to try to compile a list of movies based on, there's a book called The 50 Worst Made, based on that list. So those 50 movies will go in there. It will go according to availability as well as just horribleness. I think that the movies that Riff Tracks or Mystery Science Theater 3000 have done, especially the older ones, would probably be a good one. However, some of those have been done to death. So we're just trying to compile our list and get it all together.
So we've actually rented out the Royville movie house once a week. We will be getting some popcorn, sitting down, watching those films. After we have drawn them out of some old popcorn barrels that we found in the back of the movie house, you'll know in advance what movies we'll be reviewing that week. So you can, if you wish, try to find the movie. So you will have seen it before we air our review. You can kind of listen, see if you agree with our notes, and maybe put some comments in the comments section. We can have a little discussion.
The first bad movie that we will be watching will be Battlefield Earth, with John Travolta getting so fat because he ate all of the scenery. And then And
this movie I have never seen before.
I have. But we can also maybe call this, as I told Steve before we recorded, that Ellen Likes Terrible Things. Because actually I do kind of enjoy some of these movies just for their entertainment value. Watching John Travolta be a horrible scene stealer is actually hilarious.
Well, as long as John Travolta is dancing, I don't think it can be that bad of a movie.
He does wear dreads.
Well, there you go. Pretty close.
Anyway, then our first good movie that we will be reviewing, instead of starting at the bottom, since we're going to do a random poll every week, we're going to start with number 50, which is Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, directed by Mr. Peter Jackson.
And if anybody has known me, I've probably seen the movie about 5 times now. So I'm sure I'll be able to watch it again at least once more.
Very good. So those are our two first movies. I don't have air dates for the review yet. We will start with the good movie. And Steve and I will discuss, just like we are right now, our thoughts on the movie. And then we'll go from there. And then the following week, we'll put up the Battlefield Earth one. These are both relatively long movies. Battlefield Earth being 2 hours and Lord of the Rings being 1,000,000 hours. So, yeah, these first two might be a little bit longer than the rest of them because they're not going to be hour-and-a-half lengths.
But both movies should be relatively, if you do wish to see them before you listen to our review, should be relatively easy to find.
Some of the bad movies, we have had a few problems finding some of the ones that I've come up with on as clean copies of the movies. So we will disclose when we have to. We will disclose when we have to use like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Riff Tracks version of the movie, because as Steve pointed out, some of them are cut.
And it just seems kind of. Yeah, the bad movie might be comical in its first viewing. However, Riff Tracks and Mystery Science Theater play to that. So a movie that is not supposed to be comedic might be comedic just because they're riffing on it, for lack of a better phrase. So we want everybody to know if we did watch it in that way, just to kind of be forthcoming.
And since you do know ahead of time, if we need help finding a copy, we might appeal. And if any of you do know people who have copies of terrible movies, especially the monster flicks of the 60s, those seem to be the ones that we will have some issues with, as well as some of the like Star Wars and Blade Runner ripoffs of the 80s. So anyway, since you will have advance warning of what we will be reviewing, it's a possibility that somebody out there might either know where to find it or have a copy for us to borrow. So that's what I have to say about the Royville Movie House.
All right. And there's some other things that we would like to do with the channel. As you know, if you have been listening to it, we have been posting Star Wars, The Adventures of Morgan Trechke. The first story arc, the first episode, shall we say, is the Pirates of Saffron. We would also like to do other games. Most of these, however, will probably be one-shots where I will review the system, talk to Ellen about what kind of character she would like to make, or if there is pre-generated characters, she would take on one of those as her persona, and we would run through a night or 2 nights adventures. Now, we would probably break those up, kind of like the Adventures of Morgan Trechke, and just kind of put them out in half-hour increments, but this would be more, now, Star Wars was more for fun. We know the system. Ellen kind of wanted to play Morgan again. These would kind of be almost reviews of a game to see if we like it, to see if you like it, and to have the viewers kind of listen and get a little hint of what the game is like. So I have a number of games. If you at home would like to have us try a game out, I might have it, or we might search it out if it's not too expensive. So if you would also like to kind of comment on that, you can. We could get a little discussion going in the comments. Maybe we can choose a game to start with. And once again, these will be one-night sessions. We usually play Star Wars for about 2 hours and then get a number of chapters, as we call them, to release to the general public through our channel. So it would be one night, maybe 2 nights of about 4 hours of play, and then we would get some episodes out of that where you can hopefully get a really good idea of what the game is like.
We understand that the West End Games D6 game system is a dead game system. They're not releasing new product. What we have is what we have, and this is our opportunity for Steve to be able to run some newer games where he can get some newer material out there. There's a few games that he's interested in that he actually has the base game set for that he doesn't get a whole lot of opportunity to run because he likes to go from game to game to game, whereas I get stubborn and dig my heels in and want to play the same game for years. So this is his opportunity to be able to satisfy his, what I like to call, gamer ADD. And this is through the Morgan Trechke game. This is a way for me to also satisfy my need for long running plot.
Yeah, I have many game books that I have looked through, have found interest in, and haven't really had the opportunity to play. So this can be a way that we can do that and hopefully give some good information to the people listening to us. And if you live in or around Royville, maybe we can all get together for a night's fun and post it on the channel as well. So that is one thing I would like to do. And I've talked to Ellen and she's on board with that. So if you have comments about that, go ahead and leave them. Another thing is, once again, I have many books. I might take a few off the shelf, have a little perusal, maybe review it, put a very short review on the channel, might do that. Not exactly sure, again, which ones I would want to do. If you have suggestions, go ahead and put those in the comments. I would love to hear them and maybe take a little bit of time and give you some added information about something that you might want to know a little bit more about before you pick it up.
We both are very widespread, I don't know how to say this, very diverse. We have very diverse fandoms and very diverse geekdoms. We follow various different topics. Steve tends toward the more hard sci-fi than I do, but he also tends to drift more towards fantasy than I do. I kind of drift a little bit more toward the horror fantasy, like what a Buffy would be. About as hardcore fantasy as I get is Harry Potter. I'm not a huge fan of the fantasy world, but I do play D&D. I'm not a big fan of any...
Because of me, once again, if you listen to our Star Wars introduction, she hated D&D before she started playing it with me as well.
I'm just not a big fantasy person, but that's okay. Which is probably why I kind of resisted against Star Wars. I do love the movies. I always have since I was very small. But it still does stink of those tropes in fantasy that I don't really care for all that much. That being said, I do like Harry Potter, which is full of those tropes as well, but it's just charming. And I do like fairy tales. But there's something different between like a Tolkien world of wizards and dragons and maybe even the George R.R. Martin world filled with dragons and death. I don't know. But there's just something that is just, it doesn't appeal to me as much as, like, sci-fi wise, I tend to go toward a Star Trek or a Star Wars, which I know is kind of on the opposite sides of things. Star Trek is more toward the hard sci-fi, but not really. Whereas Steve could sit and watch, for instance, The Martian and enjoy that a lot. I need to have a little bit more interaction between people. I think that's the other thing that some of these things lack. But that's just the way it goes. So, we might continue to do a little bit of these sorts of conversations as we go along. Just to emphasize maybe something that happened, like The Mandalorian just finished not too long ago. We're not going to talk about that in depth, but I'm just saying, like, there are events that happen or finales that happen along the way that we might want to throw our opinions out on.
And I mean, I'm not sure that I'm very interesting. I know Ellen can be interesting about her ideas about various things at times. If you have an idea of a certain geeky thing that you would like us to talk about, whether it be Buffy or board games that we've played, other TV shows, different types of books, Ellen's probably more the book person for you. It's funny because I think she's probably read more fantasy books than I have. My love of fantasy is mostly from films and role-playing D&D. However, if you have ideas of things that you would like me to talk about for my role-playing experiences, Ellen's role-playing experiences, we can do that as well.
We do follow a number of different television shows. We follow a number of different movie franchises. I follow a number of different podcasts pretty religiously. I don't know about Steve. I know he listens to podcasts, but I don't know if he religiously keeps up on any of them. I have a few, and I have a few more that I started because at work I can work with one earbud in. And not get in trouble. So I'm very lucky that way. So I have 8 hours a day that I can listen to podcasts as long as I'm not in a meeting or on the phone. So there's a number of different things there. This week I started listening to Scott Troiano, which I only wanted to throw his name in here to test to see if he's actually listening, even though he said that he loved us. I haven't heard from him about this. So Scott, if you're listening, just thumbs up or something.
You should come visit Royville. It's a nice place to live.
And I kind of miss your face. Anyway, moving on. Other than that, we just wanted to touch base as us, as opposed to DM and character, as opposed to movie reviewer hat, whatever. This is just us talking to you about what's coming up, what we're into, and just asking for some suggestions on how we might be able to make this a little bit better.
And so, in kind of conclusion, the things that we have specifically planned right now are we've recorded another session of Star Wars, so we will be editing that and putting that out soon. Once again, those will come out on Sundays. We are deep in the process of opening the Royville movie house and reviewing the movies. We have talked to the manager, set some times up to watch our films, get our popcorn together. So that is also in the works and should be coming out relatively soon. Other than that, however, besides these one-on-ones every once in a while, we're kind of open to maybe what you guys would like us to do. We will probably do some one-shot gaming things if you guys have ideas of which games you would like us to try. I have many of them probably, or if you think that there's something cheap that we could get, we could do that as well. So those 3 projects are deep in the works at this point. Other than that, we're kind of open. We probably won't do continuous ideas, but if you have something you want us to riff on, you have an idea of something you want us to talk about, we would be definitely open to that.
For sure. But all that being said, I think that we are ready to call it a night.
Yeah, it looks like the Royville lamps are being set up outside, so it's getting a little dark outside. So
we are really grateful for those of you who have listened to us, because as we've said to each other, and now we're going to say to you, we don't feel like we're that interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great that you're taking your time. If you have anything you'd like to tell us, anything you'd like to see us do in the future, leave a comment. Tell your friends about us. We definitely need a bigger population in Royville. We always like to see new faces on the streets. So go ahead, drop us a line in the comments. Tell your friends about us. Subscribe. And we'll see you soon.
Next time.
Thank you very much. Good night.